I think I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about hierarchy. It's a small talk that I've been developing as I've been doing my public lectures over the last couple of weeks. I want to talk about the political significance of that and let you know how I've been trying to sort that out in my own imagination. And I think it sheds light on the nature of political debate itself, and maybe deeper light on why temperamental factors might contribute to political framing and perception. So let's start with a couple of simple observations. The first is that complex biological creatures, and even simple biological creatures for that matter, have to move forward in the world. We have to move forward towards things because we have requirements. There are things that we require to keep us alive and to keep us wanting to be alive as well, and those are different things. And we move forward towards things that we value. So there's two propositions there. The first is that we have to move forward because there are things to move forward to, because there are things we need and want. And the second is that to move forward towards something is simultaneously to value it. And so one of the implications of that is that we always live in a framework of value. We're always at a place, and we're always moving towards a place that in principle has some advantage over the place we're at. Otherwise, why move towards it? And so what that means is that there's no life without value. Another thing that you might point out, that I think is usefully pointed out, is that not only do you have to move from point A to B in life, but point A is often a very difficult place to be, because we're fragile and bounded and mortal and limited, and because we know that. And so one of the implications of that, as many great religious traditions are at pains to illustrate or demonstrate or proclaim, is that life is essentially suffering. But despite the fact that life is suffering, people can transcend that. And partly the way they transcend that is by pursuing things of value. And so that if there is no value proposition at hand, then you have no meaning to justify the difficult conditions of your life. And that's brutally difficult for people. You know, Nietzsche said, he who has a why can bear any how. And you see that people who have no purpose in their life are embittered by the difficulties of their life. And they become first bitter, and then resentful, and then revengeful, and then cruel. And there's plenty of places to go past cruel. That's just where you start if you're really on a downhill path. All right, so those are the first propositions. The second proposition would be, well, if you're going to pursue something of value, because you're a social creature, you're going to pursue that thing of value in a social space, and that means you're going to compete and cooperate with people around you in the pursuit of that value. And what that inevitably means is that, given that the pursuit of anything valuable is going to be a collective enterprise, that you're going to produce a hierarchy, or maybe more than one hierarchy, but at least a hierarchy of competence in relationship to that pursuit. So it doesn't matter what you decide to pursue, you're going to find that you and other people vary in your ability to manage that pursuit effectively and efficiently. If you're going to pursue value, then you're going to construct a hierarchy. And then there's an implication from that, which is that if you construct a hierarchy, a minority of people are going to be fantastically successful at the pursuit, and a very large number are going to stack up at the bottom. And it's an iron law of the distribution of success in hierarchy. So if you're going to have value and you're going to have hierarchy, then you're going to have inequality. And that's a problem. So now you have a political divide there. So the conservative types say, well, we need the hierarchies, because if you're going to pursue something of value, which you have to and need to, then you're going to produce a hierarchy. So if you demolish the hierarchies, you demolish value itself, and that's not a tenable move. The left wing, though, says, and to their credit, yeah, but you have to be very careful with your hierarchies because they tend towards inequality of distribution. That's one problem. Once they're established, they always also tend to a form of tyranny, because once a hierarchy of competence has been established, it can be invaded by people who use power as the means to attain status in the hierarchy. And that can corrupt and destroy even the entire hierarchy. So you have to be on guard for that. Plus, if your hierarchy becomes too steep in its distribution, so it's too tiny a fraction of people at the top and too great an agglomeration of people at the bottom, then it's not only unjust and unfair and producing excess suffering, but the people at the bottom have nothing to lose and might as well just flip the hierarchy on its end. And that's not a good way to produce a sustainable society. You don't want to put people in a position where they have nothing to lose, especially if you have something to lose, but also just with regards to principles of like fairness and justice, let's say. So it seems to me that that's a decent way of conceptualizing the political landscape, and that gives you a conceptual framework within which you can put people on the left and right in their proper position. But in a functioning economy and in a functioning democracy, I would say, you need both types. You need the liberal types to establish new territory and to put out new values so that new hierarchies might be organized, so that effective movement towards those ends might be instantiated. And you need the conservatives to actually implement the processes. And so a society of only conservatives becomes static, and that's not good because the environment transforms and you have to keep up with it. And a society that's only composed of the left-leaning liberal types is very good at generating all sorts of new possibilities, but very bad at generating all sorts of new actualities. And so we should be, first of all, cognizant of the fact that hierarchical organization is inescapable if you're also going to pursue value. Second, that if you produce hierarchical structures, that you're going to produce inequality inevitably, and there are negative consequences as a function of that, and that both sides of that equation, let's say, need a voice, because both of those functions are valuable, necessary, but also at odds with one another, and at permanent odds, because it is the case that you need hierarchies, because otherwise you have nothing to do. And it's also the case that if you have hierarchies, then the poor will always be with you. And that's a chronic functional problem that has to be addressed.